So we'll be reading the agenda items out loud to you so that everybody knows what we're talking about, okay?
The meeting of the Connecticut Board of Education will now convene. I'm going to ask everybody to stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, would you mind doing it?
Flag's in the back.
Oh, there it is.
After the pledge, we'll stand for a moment of silence. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Will the district clerk please call the roll?
Mrs. Orbelis? Present. Mr. Amaranda?
Present.
Mr. Ferrioli?
Here.
Mr. Imbasciani?
Present.
Mrs. Kennedy? Present. Mrs. Adams? Present. Mr. Annucci?
Present.
Mrs. Donnelly? Present. Mrs. Manzi? Present. Mr. Middleman?
Present.
And Mr. Garcia.
Present.
Thank you.
Changes to the meeting agenda, motion? There is no changes? No. Yeah, I'm not on it yet. Okay, approval of the minutes of the Board of Education. Just motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Greg Garcia, would you like to speak?
Well, that's an interesting question, but I certainly will take the opportunity to do so. Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Gercio, and I am the General and Labor Counsel to the Connecticut Board of Education. I've been asked by the board to speak with you tonight in connection with the incident that you've all read about in the newspaper and its impact on the schools of the Connecticut District. When something like that happens, and you'll have to forgive me for speaking more generally than you would like because of the rules of disclosure and issues related to personnel matters, which I'll tell you a little bit about. When something like what you read about happens, and the police are involved, the first question that arises is, well, what are the rights and obligations of a school district with regard to its employees, and what is the pace upon which the school district exercises its rights and obligations? So the way that works is this. There is a section of the education law that authorizes disciplinary proceedings to be commenced whenever a Board of Education, by a majority vote, determines that probable cause exists to proceed with a disciplinary hearing. That hearing is run pursuant to specific provisions of the education law, and it is presided over by what we'll call a judge, in actuality an arbitrator, whose decisions are final and binding on the parties after a due process hearing has been completed. By due process hearing, I mean one of an evidentiary nature, where witnesses are called, the respondent, which is what the employee is called, is represented by counsel, the district is represented by counsel, and a full-blown evidentiary hearing occurs. When the incident that it becomes the subject of the charges is one that happens within the duties and responsibilities of the educator during the school day, and the evidence that is available is obtained by the school officials through their own investigation, then nothing prevents the school board from proceeding with all deliberate speed to investigate its case, to determine whether probable cause exists, and ultimately to conduct that hearing. When, however, the matter occurs outside of the school grounds and outside of the school day, and it is the subject of a criminal prosecution, then a different set of rules apply. Those rules apply not at the doing of the, or as a result of anything that a Board of Education does, but as a result of the actions and processes that happen in the district attorney's office. So there are cases where the only witnesses that would be called in connection with that case are police officers. Those are particularly true in connection with the kinds of offenses where someone is using alcohol or drugs or things of that nature, and there is a determination that their abilities have been adversely affected or impaired in any way. That information is exclusively within the possession of the authorities and exclusively proven through the testimony of police and district attorney witnesses. When that's the case, a school district can't proceed until the criminal prosecution is completed. And the reason is very straightforward. And universal, by the way. This is not just a Connecticut or a Suffolk County matter. I've been doing this kind of work for over 40 years. I represent over 50 school districts. I've had dozens and dozens of experiences like this over the course of the decades. Without exception, when all the evidence is under the jurisdiction of the police department, they husband that. They do not make it available to the school district or any other municipality until such time as their criminal prosecution is completed. And the reason for that, from their perspective, is they do not want their witnesses testifying in a proceeding before they testify in the criminal prosecution. They want the first opportunity to be within the context of that criminal prosecution. When that happens, there is simply no ability for a school district to proceed until such time as that criminal prosecution is concluded. Now, there's an interesting little dilemma there in that if the prosecution is successful and the person is convicted, then you don't have to do much work on our end because the conviction record is what we call prima facie proof, conclusive proof of guilt. And consequently, the hearing is short. The dilemma is that that could be 18 months or more from now, because, to use that old cliche, the wheels of justice grind slowly. In the event that the prosecution is unsuccessful, and sometimes it is, not necessarily because of guilt or innocence, but because within the criminal context, the burden of proof is what anyone who's ever watched Law and Order on TV knows is beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a very high standard. And sometimes the proof is such that that standard is not met. It is not unusual for that standard to be, that the district attorney's office does not prevail because of the degree of that burden, but that civil prosecution under 3028 of the Ed Law happens anyway, because the burden of proof in that environment is a civil burden, a preponderance of the evidence, which simply means more evidence in favor than as against. So, without making reference to any particular case, it is clear that whenever you have that kind of environment, namely a criminal prosecution is pending, then a school district its hands are completely tied. It's unable to proceed in the absence of its ability to construct independent evidence on its own of guilt. Sometimes that happens because you have lay witnesses. You see that, and you've seen this here historically, in connection with cases where employees are charged with misconduct with regard to other employees or students or community members. The DA doesn't have the same kind of control over lay witnesses, and you can proceed sometimes under that circumstance. In cases involving chemical tests or things like DWI and so on, it's not possible to do that because all the evidence is within the realm of the district attorney's office. The last thing I want to talk about in this regard has to do with what happens pending. Well, while all of that's going on, as a general rule, when you see these kinds of cases in schools, almost invariably that teacher is removed from the classroom pending the completion of the prosecution. The law requires that if that removal occurs, that it be with pay. And most typically, an alternate assignment is provided so as to get something productive occurring while that's happening, while simultaneously not exposing the teacher to the disruption that is likely to occur in the school environment as the events become the subject of conversation, dialogue, etc., and perhaps even worse, within the context of instruction in a classroom. You have your hand up, you want to say something? Oh, okay. So, with that bit of background, I've been asked, to the extent that I can, while simultaneously protecting the rights of employees, I will entertain some questions. I do want everybody to understand that the law is clear about public disclosure of issues that go in personnel files. And so I am not permitted to have conversation with you or answer questions that are particular to anybody's disciplinary proceeding. The only way that that could happen is if any teacher who is charged under a disciplinary or subject to a disciplinary proceeding were to waive his or her rights under the law to that kind of privacy, then the Board of Education would be free to be specific and responsive with regard to individual questions. In the absence of that waiver, we simply can't, notwithstanding the fact that you have more of an interest than simple idle curiosity, that you have concerns that you'd like answers to. Those rules are statutory. They offer the benefit of an employee, and there is absolutely nothing that we can do about that. So with that as background, if there are questions that I can answer, I'll be happy to do so.
If anybody has any questions, we're going to do up to a 30-minute participation. These questions are for Mr. Greg Garcio at the second part of the second discussion of the 30 minutes. We can entertain these questions, so we're allowing you to have the opportunity now to do so.
Is this our only 30-minute period?
It is the second 30-minute, but any questions for Greg will only be answered now. If you have a comment or concern later, I can't address them.
No, but if you're only going to give us one 30-minute period, then I'm going to speak, but not to him.
No, there are going to be two.
There is going to be
We're just
two.
gonna take
I said the
questions
second
first.
30-minute participation,
Is there two or three?
there is two. There
Okay.
are two.
So you'll take his questions first, and then the regular public participation? Is that what you're
Will
saying?
happen at the second participation.
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
If the teacher is found innocent in the court of law, for example, say the police department blew their evidence,
Yeah.
and the jury finds this person innocent, will the school district still go ahead and process a 1028 hearing?
Okay, well,
Or
let me...
Section 75, I'm not sure.
Let me, without speaking specifically, let me address your question. First of all, in a criminal prosecution, no one is ever found to be innocent. The verdict is not guilty,
I'm sorry.
and that's not a semantical difference. That's a substantive difference. Because of what I said earlier, there is this beyond a reasonable doubt burden of proof. And that instruction that a judge gives a jury is specific and powerful. In any given case, notwithstanding that fact, it is possible, depending upon what the evidence looks like and whether it's available, that a school district may indeed, and often does, proceed with its disciplinary proceeding anyway, because it is quite possible that while you don't meet the beyond a reasonable doubt standard, you meet the preponderance of the evidence standard, which is significantly less. And the difference is significant and understandable, because the beyond a reasonable doubt standard, if you fulfill it, what happens? The person goes to jail. So before somebody's freedom is taken away, that standard embedded in the Constitution requires that level of proof. In the civil proceeding, where the only thing that's at stake at worst is termination of your employment with that particular employee, the standard is lower. So what happens in every case is that you do an analysis once that evidence is available to you. And frankly, that would in all likelihood be done by me, as to whether there is a sufficient standard to prove one's case pursuant to the lower standard of proof, and what the likely penalty is as a result of analyzing thousands and thousands of cases that have gone on in the state of New York, in the last 50, 60 or more years. And we'll only be in a position to do that when and if evidence is disclosed to us. Now, in an ideal world, we love to have witnesses who are available to us so we don't have to wait for the criminal prosecution. Number one, it takes long. Number two, it's costing a fortune, as the employee is not in front of children, but earning a full salary. And frankly, we often think, forgive me for saying this, that we're better at it than the DA's office might be. But that's beyond our control in cases where they are the only proprietors of the evidence. And that's, I'm speaking universally about that, not particularly. Tony, I know you wanted to get up.
No, not for you.
Okay. Anybody else?
This is your opportunity to speak regarding this matter.
Can't hear you.
This is your opportunity to speak regarding this matter. Want a question?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have a question for you. I just want to know, if there's a legal placement, somebody's filled his spot and has been fired in his absence? Any person that this
Is he replaced?
There's somebody that's in the classroom.
There is someone who's in the classroom.
So there is somebody covering the
Yes.
absence?
Yes. Is there any more questions?
I have a question. As the attorney, you're speaking, you're making the point that disclosure is something, an important factor in trying to protect everybody involved. As the legal representative to the district, would you say that it was important for anyone from the district who spoke on behalf of the district regarding a matter such as this, that they use as much restraint as possible and limit themselves to factual information only and avoid pontificating and giving opinion as to what all teachers, the standard all teachers should be held to, and just limit themselves to the facts of the matter? Would you suggest to anyone speaking on behalf of the district that that was the more reasonable professional way to go?
Okay, it's a bit of a loaded question, because we really do understand what has happened in the last few days and why many of you are out here. And I do recognize that. As I try to thread the needle there as best I can, let me say that what should always happen is that, to the maximum extent possible, the privacy rights of the individual should be protected. And And again, speaking generally, what we should be doing is trying to do two things simultaneously that are potentially inconsistent. And that is to satisfy the needs of people who have concerns about the well-being of their children, believe me, I'm the last guy you should be applauding. So doing that on the one hand, while simultaneously not prejudging the guilt of the employee. And again, speaking generally, the best way to do that is to limit your comments to as limited as you can. And frankly, that's why I'm here tonight, to make sure that everybody understands that that is the unanimous position that this administration and Board of Education is taking as we sit here tonight, and that's the position that it will take as we go forward in the future.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Am I correct in understanding that?
I'm sorry, you have to speak up because I have difficulty hearing.
Am I correct in understanding that robocalls can be directed to specific schools? Is that correct?
I don't know that answer.
Yes, that's correct.
Correct. Therefore, this instance would matter with high school parents. So therefore, in the future, I think it is best to install a policy that if you have elementary parents, middle school parents that have nothing to do with this issue, that we not receive those phone calls in the middle of the afternoon for our children to hear them.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I got here late and I didn't hear the whole thing. But as a taxpayer and a member of this community for a lot of years, aren't we entitled to know what's going on, whether it's in the high school or when in the grammar school? What do we, when we allow these things to happen and not take a stand one way or the other, what message are we sending to our children?
Well,
And to me, that's the most important thing. Whether he's was indicted, if he's not indicted, what message are you people sending to our children?
okay. Well,
Drug he's teaching.
to the extent that there's a question embedded in that statement, a couple of things. Number one, as a taxpayer, I'm sure you'll understand that I can't repeat everything I just said to this group because I'm charging you to do that. And you don't want to extend my time longer than you have to. But I can very briefly say that while you can make a generalization about the public's right to know, that right is not, it's a limited one. And there are laws which prevent full disclosure of everything that every elected official knows or hears at any time to satisfy what could be very valid concerns by members of the community. The reality is we operate pursuant to laws. We are required to follow those laws, and periodically, to the extent that we need to be educated about them or reminded about them, that's part of my job.
I'm going to quote Hillary Clinton here. His name was already released, so what does it matter now? What does it matter?
Well, at the risk of responding in kind, that's probably not the ideal person to be quoting with regard to...
Probably not, but she said it, so I had to give her the credit for it.
But the bottom line is what somebody else does doesn't affect their obligation. It's not as though you could say, okay, the cat's out of the bag, so we can all say whatever we want. They are required to operate pursuant to laws as they are informed of them by me. And there isn't any huge penalty in connection with that. There is the common sense of, if you're an elected official, you follow what the law tells you.
I just want to be clear on what you just said. So you were saying about, she was asking a question about the name, and and that how we're not supposed to use the name. So did Ms. Adams then violate the law by using the employee's name?
I'm not going to comment on what happened in the past. My job is, as I'm sure you can understand, to represent the people who are sitting up in this stage. I'm not an independent judge of my client's conduct. I am a creature of the client. And what advice I give is guarded and protected by confidentiality. You've heard of the word attorney-client privilege. The bottom line is that everybody understands what the law is, and going forward, everybody's going to operate pursuant to it. Yes, ma'am.
Were you contacted before the robocall? The content of the robocall, were you or any of your associates?
All communications between my office and the board and administration are protected by attorney-client privilege.
Of course.
Yes, ma'am.
I, for one, when I hear about a teacher in my district on the news, it doesn't matter what school my kids go to, I was glad for the robocall to have everything clarified. And the teacher's name was released by News 12 and in the newspaper, and I heard about it long before the robocall. So thank you. I appreciate the call.
Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
When something like this happens, be it a teacher or anyone, just a custodian.
Speak up a little bit.
If it be a teacher or a custodian or anybody that has an issue, something similar to this or something quite a little different, and people in the district know about it and don't come forward, is that legal, illegal, immoral, unprofessional, unethical? Can you please talk to that issue?
I say this with the ultimate respect that I have for you, Ms. Kennedy, as a member of the Board of Education. But what you're now asking me for is to give a legal opinion in public with regard to an item that would be covered by the privilege. And only the board has the right to waive that privilege. I don't, nor does an individual board member. So to the extent that you ask me for a legal opinion, that has to be given in executive session. What the board does with it once it gets it is entirely up to it. But I can't violate the concept unless the board tells me it's okay.
So I can ask this again in executive session?
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else have a question?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have a question, I would just like to make a statement. I have a high school senior who is very upset about the phone call, but, was happy to find out about it, especially in Suffolk County when this drug problem is so out of control that now, the Suffolk County government is now instructing people, lay people, teachers, policemen, anybody to give Narcan to help people in this situation, to reverse that situation. I think it's extremely important that I appreciate the fact that instead of sweeping things like this under the carpet, they do need to be addressed. And they're not addressed enough as it is. So we did appreciate it, and, unfortunately it is what it is. Especially after there were incidences on other occasions that involved school personnel and seniors again last year, and the school did address that right away. So it was very much appreciated by the parents that it was addressed in a more timely fashion.
If these other incidents are things that occurred, if they're documented, then I'm concerned about administration's ability to follow through on what they need to do. If they're not documented, that's hearsay, and that becomes a whole different problem. So are they documented incidents?
You're talking about an individual personnel matter that we are not permitted to talk about in public. But it's not.
Does anybody else have any other questions? This is your opportunity to ask these questions in regard to this matter.
No, but if we're not finished with 30 minutes, I have more. Just putting that out there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your courtesy.
Are we finishing the 30 minutes now with other questions, with other public participation?
No.
since we haven't done it, we're gonna continue with it and then have the public discussion.
Does that mean we're not finishing the public participation?
No, we're ending public, we've just dedicated that portion to that.
So we had one, not two.
We having two, you had opportunity to ask questions for
Right.
this particular area, and then the second discussion, you can ask whatever questions.
Next item on the agenda is G, new business, discussion items, Budget Advisory Committee.
Okay.
That's all right, that's all right, I bought a copy. Turn the microphone on.
I'm going to read through the Budget Advisory Committee charge, and then I'll be looking for a consensus to accept this as the charge. The membership shall include community and PTA representatives as nominated by the Board of Education. The charge. The goal of this year's budget, if possible, is to limit the tax levy increase to what a tax cap would provide, or lower if possible. The Budget Advisory Committee is hereby charged by the Board of Education and the Superintendent of Schools to 1. Analyze the working draft document of the budget to ensure conformance with the goal of limiting expenditure increases. 2. Consider the ratio between providing appropriate and expected levels of service to children and the impact of property tax increases on district residents. 3. Committee members will be asked to attend all budget-related board meetings and, when necessary, meet as a group to review particular areas of the budget. 4. Provide the Board of Education with a written and oral report by March 22nd, 2016, containing the committee's considerations regarding the proposed 2016-17 budget. Term. The Budget Advisory Committee's term commences October 27th, 2015, and expires on April 19th, 2016. The proposed meeting schedule is to be determined by the committee, the superintendent, and the Board of Education. Structure. The committee shall elect co-chairpersons and a recorder for the taking of minutes. The superintendent, assistant superintendents, and other management staff will be available for resource assistance, but will not be considered as part of the committee's membership. Operational procedures. 1. Close liaison between the committee and the board shall exist. Minutes of meetings shall be sent to the superintendent, who in turn will provide copies of such minutes to the board. Approved minutes should be received within 7 business days from the date of the meeting when the committee approves the minutes. 2. Correspondence between the committee and the board shall be coordinated through the superintendent to ensure that all board members are kept informed in a timely manner. 3. Meetings of the committee shall be open to the public and shall be conducted in accordance with the spirit and intent of New York State's open meeting law. 4.
collective bargaining issues related to terms and conditions of employment, including, but not limited to, salaries of employees are not within the scope of the committee's charge and function in accordance with the New York State Public Employee Relations Law. Such issues are the sole responsibility of the Board of Education and Superintendent of Schools pursuant to state law. 5. The committee's final recommendations should be based upon agreement among the members. Until such agreement is reached, a report is usually not made without a minority report. The committee retains the right to determine the process of arriving at agreement. For example, consensus, majority vote, etc. The committee's report and oral statements are to be made to the board and superintendent prior to any public release. The committee and/or committee representatives shall not release any oral or written statements and/or shall not release any majority or minority reports to the media. The release of committee reports and statements to the media is the sole responsibility of the Board of Education. Subsequent to the submission of the committee's report to the school board, the committee and/or committee members may comment to the media if requested regarding the committee's work and recommendations. 7. The committee will submit its report at a budget meeting of the Board of Education. 8. The board may consider and vote upon the recommendations of the committee. However, the board is not obligated to follow committee recommendations. The Board of Education, as the official governance body, has the right to accept, reject, or modify all or parts of such recommendations. 9. Following receipt of the committee's final report and recommendations, the Board of Education will review the document at a budget meeting. 10. The Board of Education reserves the right to rescind the appointment of any committee member who does not comply with the official charge or who does not conform to the committee's operational procedures. You're welcome.
Does anybody have any questions? Lee?
Are these basically the same rules you had last time? Basically. Some slight modifications.
Ted?
No, good.
Nick? Do we have a consensus to accept this? Yes. Thank you, Sharon.
You know, I'm pulling up the calendar right now. Is that the date?
You have 9/23 community invitation sent.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Okay, tomorrow. I remember that now.
The deadline for the VAC applications is going to be October 13th.
Thanks so much.
Nobody can hear me.
October 13th. So anybody that wants to be on the Budget Advisory Committee, please be in contact with Andrea by October 13th. Okay, moving on to 3012D, resolution. Linda, would you like to speak to that?
Absolutely. At the last board meeting, we had read through a draft of the resolution that we wanted to send to Governor Cuomo and all our legislators as related to the 3012D law, which is something that I know the Board of Education and myself have very strong opinions on the negative impact that it will have on school systems, on our teachers and our students. And so we were asked to, we were actually asked by the CTA to add one part to that, which I have handed to all of you, and I wish we could put it on the overhead so that you could see it, but the, you want to read the whole thing or just the
No, just the
Okay, so we've just added 2 different changes. I'm going to let Mr. Ferrioli read it.
The first change we added, that's the one that the CTA requested. The first change we added was requested by the CTA, and it involves the narrowing of curriculum. It says, whereas studies have shown that with an increased focus on annual testing, there is an inevitable narrowing of the curriculum as teachers focus more on test preparation, thereby decreasing engaging activities in arts, music, civics, and other non-tested areas. And then the second addition was a addition regarding Governor Cuomo's last statement that he made on September 3rd. It says, whereas Governor Cuomo is in a release statement on September 3rd, 2015, stated the Fact is that the current Common Core program in New York is not working and must be fixed. To that end, the time has come for a comprehensive review of the implementation of the Common Core standards, curriculum, guidance, and tests in order to address local concerns. And yet all districts in New York State are mandated to negotiate and implement the evaluation of teachers and principals based upon an admittedly broken system. And we've obviously, at the end, it states, just for anybody that wasn't here, we have other resolutions that we read last time, but it states, therefore, the Board of Education of the Connecticut School District of Islip calls upon the governor and the legislators of the state of New York to amend Education Law 3012D in favor of fair, equitable, and meaningful evaluation system that provides opportunity for reflection, feedback, and growth, does not rely on student growth scores, and does not diminish the local control of boards of education and district administration to provide the best education for the students it serves.
Is there any questions? Lee?
Yep, perfect.
Ted?
No, just making sure that the Committee on Incentives and Test-Based Accountability in Education, we're able to get that information. That's where we got this from.
Yes, that was the research that I did to look at narrowing of curriculum, and there was actually research that demonstrated that. The Committee on Incentives and Test-Based Accountability in Education in 2011 actually produced that study.
Obviously, Nick, I don't think you have any questions.
I have no questions.
Craig? Okay. So are we taking a consensus? Lee?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, we have two guests here tonight. We have Mr. Sidman, who is our AP at the high school, and our new principal of the high school, Mr. Costa.
Welcome, gentlemen.
They're here to speak about the PSAT plan.
So just to give a brief introduction, last February we received information from College Board outlining some new recommendations and new requirements for schools administering the PSAT. So I asked both of these gentlemen to come. They put together a proposal that they would like to present to the Board of Education regarding the plan for the upcoming PSATs. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. The proposal is as such. On October 14th, 2015, was an AM session of the PSAT. This year, the PSAT is offered only on the weekday, which is on Wednesday. We chose October 14th as a Wednesday for the administration for the high school. We chose the AM session starting at 7:18 to 10:30 a.m. Now, one stipulation that we had to follow this year, which is actually a very good one, the PSAT selected Connecticut High School to be a school where our 11th grade students can take the PSAT for free, providing that we only test the 11th grade. Historically, at Connecticut High School, a very small number of 10th graders take the exam. Mr. Sidman, we have a chance to speak in a moment, could elaborate on that small number, but it is truly a very small and insignificant number compared to the number of 11th graders that take the exam. Being that we could do it at a free SAT for the entire 11th, PSAT for the entire 11th grade, we will bus the 11th grade in, just a proposal to bus the 11th grade in at the 7:18 morning bus run, the regular bus run, and only the 11th grade will be in the building from 7:18 to 10:30. At 10:30, a second bus run will take place, delivering the 9th, 10th, and 12th grade students to the building, whereas after 10:30, the remainder of the building, all grades, will follow a 5 to 9 schedule. Special education students, those students who are of lower cognitive function, as well as life skills, they will have the opportunity to take the PSAT if they choose, otherwise they will follow a normal day schedule. Their teachers will have a normal day with those students, they will be in their normal classrooms, and they will go through their normal schedule throughout the day. I think that is what we have for today. Mr. Sidman, can I elaborate?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Just some back history on what the College Board did. This past February, the College Board had released dates for the new PSAT. I use the word new because the College Board has revised the PSAT for the upcoming year, to reflect the new SAT that's being introduced in March of 2016. That being said, the College Board only planned to offer 2 exams, which historically was not the way the College Board operated with regard to the PSAT. They had always traditionally offered a Saturday exam nationwide as an option for schools. As such, we had no choice but to, if we want to provide our kids with the opportunity, to provide them with the PSAT on a Wednesday. I surveyed schools across Long Island, and 22 schools had responded, providing a nice cross-section, and most of those schools had chosen to offer it on October 14th. All right, we had decided that that would be a good date to offer it as well, to be consistent with the majority of the schools on Long Island. That being said, over the summer, late in the summer, in August, we were contacted by the College Board to see if Connecticut would be interested, the high school that is, in offering the PSAT at no charge to our students. Typically, the cost of the PSAT, the flat cost for the test alone, is approximately $15, and then schools tag on an additional fee to students for administrative costs to give that exam. This would be a benefit to our students in the rollout, and hopefully we would get quite a bit of participation for the PSAT. I believe the numbers in the past have ranged between 300 and 350 students that have taken the PSAT traditionally on Saturdays at Connecticut High School, and as I indicated, it's a small number of 10th graders that have taken it. Now, not to open up Pandora's box, but there is a component here that is of value to 10th graders, and nationwide there is a movement where some 10th graders do take that. One of the things we have to recognize with the College Board is they are very much indeed a business, and they want to sell these test services to our kids. It's my recommendation to the Board of Ed and to the community. We provide students with the opportunity, our 10th graders, but with regard to the PSAT, we can offer them the opportunity to use our online web-based tutorial method test prep. And for those students who would like that chance to start the practice for the PSAT, they would have that opportunity through that tool that we as a district pay for. So I think that would be a good alternative for those students who would like to sit for it. There are other alternatives as well, but right now I think it's advantageous for our 11th graders to get this under their belt, since they will be the first group to take the new formatted SAT starting in March. It is the recommendation, by the way, of our guidance department with regard to the SAT. We're going to encourage our 11th graders, all right, following the PSAT on October 14th, to take the old version of the SAT either in November, December, or January to get the old test under their belt. Recommendation from many colleagues across the county in the area of guidance is possibly avoid taking the March SAT since it's a new rollout and there's a lot of variables we don't know about that assessment, and then encouraging our 11th graders to take either the May SAT or the June SAT.
Can I ask you a question? You were referring to the online component, but that was for the 10th graders to have an opportunity? Is that what you're referring to? Because we're essentially going with the plan where the 11th graders get for free. That's the alternative for the 10th graders.
Correct. Traditionally in our district, we roll out method test prep to our 11th graders, generally a week or two after they take the PSAT, to start giving them time to prep to take the SAT. It's a wonderful tool. It's online. It's at the student's discretion when they want to get on and use it. It's available 24/7. And what's nice about it, not only does it provide SAT tutorial, it provides ACT tutorial as well.
Now, Mr. Simon, are you offering a seminar next week, I believe I heard you mention?
Yes, email blast went out to our parents in grades 9 to 11. I didn't send it out to 12th grade parents since really they've been through the lecture before, and their students are taking probably the last go-around on the SAT this coming October 3rd and maybe one in November. But for the students and parents in grades 9, 10, 11, all right, Tom Ellers, the president of Method Test Prep, will be coming in on Tuesday the 29th, 7 p.m. in the high school auditorium, and he's going to provide the community with a nice overview of the ins and outs of the new PSAT, the SAT, and also some of the changes coming down the pike with the ACT. While not as extensive as the changes the College Board's implementing, we want to provide the community with as much information so that our kids have the advantage to do well on those exams.
And that's next Tuesday at what time?
Tuesday, 7 o'clock in the high school auditorium.
That's for the parents. What do you do for the students?
Students are invited to attend that as well.
Is there any discussions during the day for students?
The students, in terms of discussion, certainly they have the resources of their guidance counselors. The 11th graders specifically, the week following the PSAT, will be introduced to method test prep in the high school library through their English classes, where they'll be provided with tutorial on how to take full advantage of that program.
That's important.
Thank you.
So you're asking for the recommendation of a delayed opening for the 9th, 10th, and 12th grades, and 11th grade would have a regular start time, 3 hours to take the test?
Yes, and in fact, we did contact transportation. Mr. Miller did indicate that he can facilitate that bus run.
So I believe that they're going to be asking for a consensus from the board to see if everybody's okay with that. So Lee?
As long as the teachers are okay with it, we're okay with it. I am.
Ted?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, now we're moving on to policy. Nick, would you like to speak about policy?
Yeah, I'd like to speak about that.
Want me to talk a little bit about it?
All the notes here at the bottom, like the executives.
Oh, you want to, okay.
It doesn't say. Want me to start? You can type in.
If you want, that's fine.
How about if I start and Nick types it?
That's fine, yeah, whoever.
We discussed one of the items the public brought to us was some issues with the candidates and the campaigning during the last election, that some of the information that was provided in the packet as regards to money that was spent and things like that was not in our policy. So we included that information in policy 3120.1. So all the information that was in the packets that was given to the candidates is now also in the policy to be reviewed by the public. So that was one thing we covered.
Public participation at board meetings.
Yeah, we speak about public participation at board meetings. And the resolution there was, we are,
We have a new form.
yeah, we have a, no, we haven't decided that.
Well, we're discussing it tonight. It's a new form that's out for people that want to speak. Yeah, discuss it.
Yes, yes.
There's a new form for residents who wish to speak to the board. They should fill it out and hand it in to the district clerk, who will then in turn give it to the board president. So we get better, it's not just stop people from speaking, it's basically so the board president will know what the topics are and she can put them all together.
It's to better serve you as the public, so we can kind of group the discussion together. If we have 6 or 7 people that have come down to speak about the same issue, we'll be aware of that, and we're hoping to get to the point where we can call those people up and have them speak about the same issue, rather than having the speaking going back and forth between multiple issues. So that's one of the purposes of it, also to inform us of what you'd like to speak about, to make it more, relevant.
Will forms be there in the beginning of the
The forms will be available in the beginning of the meeting, yes. And they should be turned into the district clerk at the beginning of the meeting. We will provide a short period of time right at the beginning with the forms and I guess some pens so that people can fill them out.
Excuse
I'm
me,
sorry?
I have to wait until the discussion. Can you define what?
Yeah.
There's actually, can you define what spontaneous questions are? I mean, can you try to walk me through this? I'm trying to understand where you got the policy from. Have you looked at different policies before you found this one that you
Yes, we
liked?
did look at different policies from different boards of education and other school districts, and we tried to compile what we thought were the best policies to help facilitate, what we're trying to do, which is a more, organized situation for the people that are participating.
So,
It also provides us with a great opportunity to have all of your information, who you've spoken to, who you've contacted, about the problem, so that we can then follow up with not only you as to what the issue was and how either, Ms. Adams or the board handled it, but also with the person that you spoke to and either why it got this far or how it's been handled so far. So the form you'll see has numerous places on it for you to fill in information that you've already done and you followed through with your building principal, possibly the teacher first, then the building principal, then obviously administration, and then it would go to the board. So there is certain levels at which parents should try to participate in the proper procedure with an issue that they have. And that information can then be given to us so we have some background as to what you're talking about, rather than assuming that you've already done that and we don't know whether you've spoken to the teacher, whether you've spoken to administration, what the result was from them. We have a lot of information that we need to have in order to try to handle the issue and facilitate the issue quicker, and by filling out that form, it helps us to do that.
So if I have an agenda question, I don't need to fill out this form?
You still do, you just put the topic in.
No, if you have a question that comes up during the meeting,
Correct.
then no, that's where spontaneous questions can be addressed as well.
So then can we define spontaneous questions
It will
in
be
this?
something that comes up during the agenda.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, by looking at this, it seems a little vague, and I'd like to have a little information, because spontaneous questions can be anybody just asking around at the audience. I think you need to be a little bit more defined on that.
Well, it would have to be during the public participation time.
But then you need to state that in your policy.
Okay, well we can, any speak, it does, I think it does say during the public participation time in both of the forms.
So then you can make reference to an agenda. So you made reference to the agenda on there?
This is public participation, request to speak.
No, we're not trying to limit, the policy, the point of the policy is not trying to limit people from talking. It's trying to gather information so we can help to solve the issue.
No, I
better.
understand
So there's
that.
still going to be the public precipitation, say that?
Participation.
Not precipitation, it's not going to rain in the board meeting. Participation, and, and then we will still have that portion of it, but it gives us the opportunity to take some of the issues and respond to them quicker, gather information, group those things together, and really move, in a better direction.
Is there any way that you could kind of put that wordage in the policy? Because it's a little hard to
Yes, we
follow
could
the
look at it,
policy.
sure.
I think it needs to be a little bit more defined, because by looking at this, it's almost saying that I need to fill out every time. And if I just have, say for example, Mr. Costa, Mr. Simon had a question, brought up, a very good topic. Do I now run to the district clerk, grab a sheet from her, and then fill it out?
That's a different, we're just having cross conversation with the community. That's totally different than public participation. It's two different ball games. If we're getting, if we're giving the community, having a back and forth discussion before public participation, that's totally different than public participation. That's just, you're giving them permission to answer Mr. Costa or ask Mr. Costa questions while he's here. That's not public participation. That's just cross conversation that you're permitting. This is strictly public participation that we're discussing here. Actually, I thought you wanted to do this.
We'll look at it and
I just think it needs to be a little bit more tweaked and more defined, because it's just a little vague in my opinion.
all right, so we'll send it back to policy and we'll look at it.
But that is not the exhibit, that is not the policy. The policy is being presented just to have a cross-reference updated.
So then-
You're in the different area.
Okay.
You're in the review area.
Okay.
So it's the
You
first
could've
reading.
jumped it. It's the first reading, it's just different.
Yeah, the only thing that we're looking at tonight really is the policy, and the only thing that was added to the policy were references to other policies.
Okay.
So what you're actually talking about is the exhibit. So once you decide that that policy is the way you want it to be, then we'll bring the exhibit forward, but that's something obviously that's got questions, so we'll bring it back to policy committee and look at the exhibit again before we bring that forward.
I just think that's, it's a change that we're making, and I just want to make sure that the wordage is correctly defined better, what spontaneous questions are, and the availability when to speak. So
Maybe the word isn't spontaneous then, because it's really hard to define
It's-
spontaneous
yeah,
questions.
exactly. It means
kinda
I could just
defines
shoot out a
itself,
question.
But so maybe
Yeah,
the word
so-
is not spontaneous.
So if
Maybe
you could
the word
define that a little bit better.
Sure.
Does anybody else have any questions? So are we pulling that one?
We went to number 3.
I already went to number 3.
So that's fine.
All right, so number 3 is being pulled, so we're
No,
only
you have
going to
anything
talk
else you want to add
about.
Let's
about
go back
policy?
to policy.
Didn't you
So
talk-
number
took
2
that?
is approval of first reading of these particular policies. And we're going to be board again for second reading at the next meeting.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions regarding those?
I need a motion.
I need a motion.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
I don't think we're supposed to be voting on
Yes, you
this.
can
This is
vote on
just-
that.
Yes, you
for
can.
Just for the first reading.
We don't vote on the first reading.
We're doing that now, so we have a better accurate
Count.
count.
Oh, this is something new? Or what are we voting on? We're voting
You're
on to
just
move it to
voting
the second
move it
reading?
to a for the first reading to move to the second reading. That's what you're voting on. It's the same thing as the consensus, it's just more accurate.
Okay.
More transparent.
But we didn't just talk about broadcasting and taping of board meetings. Didn't you even talk about that, Nick?
That's what I said. What else would you like to speak about?
Yeah, is there anybody else you want to speak about? That was my only question. I read through the other ones. I didn't have any questions regarding the other policies.
Okay, all right. If you don't have any other question, that's fine.
Heather, do you have any questions regarding the other policies?
Nope.
Okay, so one of the policies is 9620, child abuse in education setting. Is being presented for adoption. And you want to speak about it? Because you want to.
All right, I'm just going to read down the list. Policies are 1230, has been revised to include reference to pertinent district policies, which was what we just discussed. 2120.1 has been revised to reflect the change of board elections to run by seat to at large, which was approved by voters in May 2015, and also references state law regarding campaign contributions. 2382 is presented for adoption in anticipation of the board audio recording its meetings. 9010 is being revised to reflect changes in state and federal law. 9580 is being revised to reflect changes in state and federal law, mostly federal law. 9620 is being presented for adoption, reflects changes in state and federal law, replacing policy 9135, which is going to be sent to, it's going to be presented as being abolished later. That's the next item. And that's it.
Okay, so we're moving on to, we're moving on to I.
We're moving on to number 3. You did
H3,
number
we need to
4,
start looking at
abolishment, you have to
committee.
take a vote. Motion and second to move it on to second reading for abolishment.
Policy replacing.
Right.
Okay, motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're moving over to recommended action, personnel matters. Motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving over to consent agenda.
Schedule 2.
I'm sorry, schedule 2. Sorry, schedule 2. Motion?
10-year salary.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, is anything in line with number 3? I don't think so. Okay, 3 is empty. Okay, we're moving over to consent agenda. Motion, and then we'll have a discussion.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the consent agenda? All right, I actually have a question. Regarding the National Cherry Blossom Festival, I understand that there's 200 students that are attending this. I think it's great. I think it's awesome. How many chaperones do we need for an out-of-state trip? I know I've asked this at the last board meeting. I didn't get an answer, so I was hoping that I can get that answer today.
It's 15 to 1.
15 to 1 on an out-of-state. Okay, so we have 200 kids. So how many, so you want me to do the math in my head, or how many volunteers are required for this trip?
We have 15 adults going on the
We
trip.
do, all right, so we have the right amount of adults.
Yes.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
Nope.
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nothing in favor. Okay, we're moving over to reports. Board of Education committees.
Buildings and grounds, nothing to report.
I have nothing to report.
Committees didn't start yet, so.
That's why I have nothing to report.
Okay, Ms. Linda Adams?
Really, all I wanted to talk about is our pep rally and our homecoming, which is this week at the high school. Our pep rally is Friday at 6:30 on the football field, and our homecoming parade will be at 12 noon, leaving the high school and coming back for judging sometime around 12:45, 1 o'clock, with our 2 p.m. kickoff of our game.
Would you like to promote Ugly Truth?
On October 6th, we will have Suffolk County Police Department with us for an adults-only presentation on the ugly truth, which actually will be talking about the overwhelming drug use that's happening in the community, and not just community here, the community across Long Island. So this was something that Mrs. Berger at the high school put together beginning at the end of last year. She was trying to get a date for last year to come in, and they gave us a date for early this year, so October 6th at the high school. It will be an adult-only presentation. There's going to be some startling facts and some interesting conversation as to what's going on in the epidemic of drug abuse on Long Island.
Is there going to be any presentation in the school? I believe I heard something at the PTA that was going to be some type of presentation at the school.
Mr. Costa, you want to?
Yes, actually that date has been changed to October 7th at the high school for the parent meeting. There was a conflict with Suffolk PD. So October 6th and October 7th will be student presentations throughout the day on both days. This way cover the A-day students and the B-day students through the phys ed classes. So October 7th will be the parent meeting at 6 p.m. in the high school auditorium.
Can you briefly just tell the parents what is it they're going to be talking to the students about?
I'm sorry?
Can you just briefly talk to the parents in the audience what will be spoken about those A and B days to the students?
Yes, they're going to talk about, as the name, the ugly truth. And quite honestly, something that I'm not very proud of. In the past 6 years, I've buried 11 students because of heroin in the various high schools that I worked at. And I hope to God that I never bury one here. So when they come in to talk to the students, they will be brutally honest. You know, they will talk to the students about the horrors of drugs, the same things they've been hearing since they were very young. But they're also going to talk about how it begins. You know, some of the things that students do now. It's okay to go drinking in mom's basement because it's safe. You know, if you're that parent that allows a student to come to me, oh, my kid drinking in my house because it's safe. You know, that's where a lot of it starts. You know, it starts with the drinking. It starts with the marijuana. It starts with, I had a leg injury in football, so I'm taking Oxycontin or Oxycodone. It leads into heroin addiction. And so those are some of the things they're going to discuss. They're going to discuss the signs. They're going to discuss the symptoms. You know, what do you do if your friend tells you, no, I want to try heroin? Or, hey, do you have any pills? You're going to go to mom's cabinet, dad's cabinet tonight. Can you score some of those Vicodins? You know, they're going to talk to the students about the horrors of not only drug addiction, but the decision to let that happen to start with. And it starts with, typically, you know, everyone talks about the gateway drug. Well, it's not just the gateway drugs they're going to mention. They're going to talk about the gateway acceptance. What's okay? It's okay if I have a couple of sips. It's okay if I smoke a little weed. It's not okay. And they're going to show them what happens once you make that decision to say it's okay, where it leads to. And granted, not every student's going to turn to heroin addiction. You know, however, they will mention, they will discuss the signs, the symptoms, what to do, what not to do, and how to get help. If you know somebody or yourself is abusing pills, using heroin, smoking marijuana, or drinking recreationally or habitually. So those are some of the things and topics they have to discuss.
So how long will the presentation be per group?
To be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure. You know, as Adam indicated, it was Ms. Berg who set it up last year. You know, as far as the actual time frame, I'm assuming, and maybe a wrong assumption, that's a period. A 40-minute production per class, all day long, on 8 days on the 6th, all day long on the 7th as well.
Thank you, Mr. Costa.
You're welcome.
It's just at the high school level for now. We're going to entertain something at the middle school level as well.
But the parents district-wide will be invited.
Anybody else? Oh, I'm sorry. Linda, would you like to add anything else to that?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, administrators, anybody have anything to speak about? Monica? Dean?
Yep.
Sharon?
I just have questions left over from the last board meeting that I'd like to answer right before public.
Yes, please.
Mrs. Panico had
raised some questions. First question I'm going to hand over to Mr. Annucci.
how many new administrative positions were created since the 14-15 school year?
Can you put the microphone
And
on?
what are they? You can't hear me, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yet I can hear you.
Well, I'm pretty loud, if you didn't notice. Whispering was never my forte.
How many were renamed from another position?
All right, let me begin with those. There are several. We formerly had a position called Assistant to the Superintendent for Special Education. That position is now a full member of the Cabinet, and it's Assistant Superintendent for Special Ed. Otherwise renamed, we now have an ENL Director. That used to be the LOTE Chair, Languages Other Than English. We have an Assistant to the Superintendent, and that was taken from a previously unfilled Assistant Plant Facilities Director. We have an Assistant Administrator for Special Education. That was taken what was from formerly an elementary special ed chair. We have a Director of Social Studies or Director of English, and I need to give you some explanation for that. It used to be a humanities chair, so one is a completely new position, the other is filling half of the other position. And then we have an Administrator for Instructional Support and Data. We took that from what was formerly a .8 FTE, full-time equivalent, from a BOCES data specialist position. We no longer have that. The person is now fully accountable and an employee of the district. New positions, again, Director of Social Studies or Director of English from the Humanities Chair. We have a pre-K elementary special ed chair which has been restored. However, we have a partial offset with that in that we eliminated one speech teacher in the district. That person is on the recall list. And finally, completely new, we have a high school dean of students.
Thank you.
Is that it, Sharon?
No,
she's
there are more.
Does this one work?
I never asked just one.
Yeah, you fixed it. Thank you. Mrs. Panico's question states, why do we vote on a budget and have a BAC to make the budget when the money is transferred so freely between categories that aren't in the same classification? And then she questions an interfund transfer, which is actually a separate question. We have to have a vote on the budget. We want the input of a BAC. Why do we have transfers? The budgeting handbook states that the Board of Education has the authority to make budget transfers. The Board of Education may, by resolution, authorize the chief school officer to make transfers within the limits as established by the board. The board established limit here is as follows. Budget transfers for non-payroll expenditures require Board of Education approval if they are in excess of $5,000. The handbook also says, it's a rare budget that would never have a transfer. They're just necessary because you can't predict everything. We have a great deal of unpredictability, different students that come into the district with different needs, opportunities that arise that we want to take advantage of and provide, or changes that are made along the way from the plan. We build contingency amounts into a budget to allow for expenditures which may arise unexpectedly. We saw last year we had a significant number of budget transfers to cover special education services which exceeded budgeted amounts. That's classically a difficult category to budget for because of the change in the population in and out of the district. Then you asked about the interfund transfer in the revenue budget. That was an interfund transfer for debt service. We have several funds.
I think it was just cut off, and that's why I questioned it.
Pardon me?
I think it was just cut off, and that's why, because it only said DE.
Oh, okay, yes, it says for debt service. So that is just leftover fund balance in the debt service fund, which is severely restricted in its usage. One of the allowable usages is to use it to pay down debt. So that's what you saw coming into the revenue budget in the general fund, money from the debt service fund for the allowable use to apply to principal and interest payments on debt service. In the past several years, not including the year we're in now, we were budgeting $500,000 from that fund. The goal is to get that down to zero because you shouldn't have money sitting in there. You asked what is the abbreviation FSW, that is food service worker. So you would have seen that on the school lunch fund appropriation status report. You asked about a $20,000 transfer from the general fund. That is the general fund offsetting the loss. We know there will be a loss in the school lunch fund every year. They're based on the past. So we are partially offsetting that loss with an inter-fund transfer, which is an expenditure in the general fund, coming in as revenue into the school lunch fund. For the past many years, it has been a $20,000 transfer. Then you mentioned Newsday's report where they talk about $30 million that we have in reserves. And you're asking if that is above the allowable percentage. The amount we have in reserves is allowable. The percentage you're referring to is the percent a school district is allowed to have in unassigned, unappropriated fund balance as a percentage of the next year's budget. That amount is 4%. For 13-14, we were right at 4%. You may recall in 12-13, we were over the 4%, and we did a capital transfer to apply that money to a capital project. And then you asked some question. Oh, you're going to ask them. You didn't ask them yet. Thank you.
Yeah, you're not asking.
She's cute.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're welcome, thanks, Larry.
Okay, any board of education?
Yes. Today I went to the Town of Islip board meeting. At the last board meeting, there was a parent that came and spoke about abandoned houses in our district. Our students walk by. It is rumored that they might be inhabited. It is rumored that they might be selling drugs. So, you know, it is out of our jurisdiction as a school board, and our security cannot go to investigate. So I went to the town to see what they could do. I explained the situation on behalf of the board. I also mentioned, you know, they listened, they didn't speak. I talked, and I also mentioned afterwards about the transportation survey that they never got back to Mrs. Adams. And they sent me out in the hallway, and at that point, I got real answers. They will be in touch with us about the transportation survey. And they thanked me on behalf of the board for being there to discuss the issue, because I told them that they're now responsible in a private meeting for our students. We were limited. They thanked me for coming to speak to them. They wouldn't have known about these houses here in Bohemia by the school, and that we'll be hearing about something happening soon. So I think it's a plus that we probably should be working with the town as well as the civics more often in order to get what we have to get done, especially this day and age. So it was a successful meeting.
Thank you, Lee. Anybody else?
Just in regard to that issue, we also did speak with our security director, you know, to look at protocols. We did speak with our security director as well, and brought him in to talk about protocols that might be able to be looked at to obviously keep our children safe. So we are, you know, taking your issue to heart and trying to be as proactive as we can.
With that said, can Mr. Flynn should contact, we can't do that, but, you know, if we heard about this rumor,
Lynn,
we
you
have
can't
to
hear
call.
you, sorry.
No, it didn't. There's a That one's on.
There you go.
That we should contact or have someone contact the police, even though this is considered rumor at this point. But maybe they should look at the houses to see if there is.
I spoke to Tom Silmy, and he's well aware of those houses that we
Well,
spoke about.
they
the
said,
last
they
meeting.
said to talk to the police department.
Tom Silva is with Suffolk County, he's not town of Islip, so he.
I understand that, but he was aware of those houses that were mentioned at the last board meeting.
Right, but those houses,
So he knew about
it's the
those
town that
houses.
has to tear them down and spend the money. The problem is they have 200 abandoned homes. They're called zombie homes
Are you referring to the houses that?
on Ferguson.
The houses at Verizon?
Right.
Right, I spoke to Tom
Right.
Sillick about that. He
Right.
knew some of the areas, the hot spots and that.
Right, but it's the town that is responsible for 200 of these zombie homes.
Okay.
And I wanted to put the zombie homes here and Connecticut on top of the list in order to, you know, they have to have a reason to do it because they can't afford to get rid of 200 homes. So I wanted to give them a reason why they should get rid of this one.
So what would you like the community to do, or the board to do?
We're just sitting back and waiting now to see what the town's going to say, and they'll come back to us.
Okay.
What they're going to do, because the only way we get to the top is if you speak up, you know. But I think that Don or someone should also talk to the police department and have them check out the rooms. Is you know, someone living in that house? Are they doing drugs? They can do an investigation. We can't. Our hands are tied. We can't. Don can't.
Thank you, Lee, I really appreciate you going.
Just to add, we're trying to be as proactive as we can and move forward with putting pressure on legislature and the town of Islip and things like that. But as parents, obviously you following up now that we've made contact with them is another step to put the pressure on them so that they are kind of forced, their hand is forced to bring their issue and look into what's going on here in your community. So I would suggest doing that.
Anything else? Okay, we're moving into public participation. Okay, I guess step to the mic. Address the board president only. You may address one or more topics in the time allotted. Individual employees, parents, or children should not be identified by name, title, position, grade, or building. Okay, discussion will be for items not addressed at the first public discussion. Participation. She has a timer. Okay.
Say when.
Now.
Okay, Matt Labrie, resident of Oakdale, kids in elementary and middle school. I have two issues. The first one will be just me as a private citizen. A rare unanimous applause line of this meeting was the letter that's being sent to Governor Cuomo. I wanted just to take the opportunity, especially if you're in executive session after this meeting and you're going to have the attorney there, to particularly stress that you as a school board would have standing if some penalty attached to something that we did, withholding of state funds or something, you would have standing to petition against that, to not lose the opportunity to propose some kind of alternative, as it may give us more leverage in some requesting an injunction against the removal of funds. Anybody can send a letter to the governor. He knows what they're going to say. He doesn't care, right? And that doesn't mean don't send letters that are negative, but propose an alternative, some other scheme that we can use. Everybody is ready to say no, right? But we need to propose some kind of alternative because it gives us some, I'm certain it would give us some additional standing. I would urge you to ask the lawyer about that. Anyone who's sending the letter could do that as well, but the school board would be unique in having standing because they could receive some kind of material harm with the withdrawal of state funding. That's the first issue. The second issue, I will be cautiously optimistic about the Budget Advisory Committee. I just want to say, as I have a sneaking suspicion that the public relations aspect of district messaging will be a topic of discussion soon. The one thing I noticed about it, having been an advocate of the Budget Advisory Committee, is that was a long list of rules. I'm wondering if we have reason to believe that we're recruiting a bunch of bad actors to the Budget Advisory Committee. In my experience with Budget Advisory Committees for 3 out of the last 4 years, all of the 3 previous years that they ran, suggests that the people who want to participate are willing to do so in an honest and sincere way to be beneficial. When we give them a charge that says, we'll give you 25 things you can't do or say, right? It may not represent itself the best way. Last thing on that is, do we know who the listed attendees are? They said there was going to be a discussion of that. I would urge you to include people who have kind of a legitimate standing in the overall consideration of the budget. If we want the discussion to be helpful, one way to guarantee that that doesn't happen is put people who have clearly diametrically opposed interests in the same room in an effort to obfuscate the discussion. So I would urge you to consider all of those things. I have already sent out messages to my friends at the Civics. I'll communicate with the PTAs tomorrow, and though I don't have anyone who is willing to have me represent them that I can speak for right now, I would like to express on record my interest in being a member of the Budget Advisory Committee as soon as I have someone to represent. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm not going to ask my first two questions, so we can get rid of it because you pretty much explained everything. So the Washington trip, if it's approved, I wanted to know if there will be hostage negotiations on a stipend, or is the stipend for this trip already established? If statements are not filed for the candidates in this campaigning, are there any repercussions? I also wanted to talk about the public participation at board meetings, number 1230 that you guys had on the agenda. The last paragraph is extremely subjective, and I urge the board to avoid any litigation by defining appropriate too loosely. Public participation policy was discussed again with this request to speak form. According to the opinion of Robert Freeman, Executive Director of the DOS Committee on Open Government, hold on, I gotta read the highlighted passage. There it is. Oh, now I gotta put my glasses on. All right. He does not believe that a public body could validly require that those who attend or seek to attend identify themselves by name, residence, or interest. In short, it is his view that any member of the public has an equal opportunity to partake in an open meeting, and that an effort to distinguish among attendees by residence or any other qualifier would be inconsistent with open meetings law and therefore unreasonable. He's got several of those under the letter P on the open meetings law on his website. You go into the letter P, you'll find several of those. Go back to this. Okay. On your broadcasting policy that no one wanted to discuss, I'll bring that up. I sincerely hope that you had the attorney look that over. Each and every one of those rules that you're imposing are not entirely lawful. For instance, New York state law says as long as one party is aware of the recording, no notification need be given. The only one I'd say is reasonable would be number 6. And then after that, you write as if you want editing powers. The recording is not your property. As a matter of fact, even if the BOE decides to record, I can still record and keep mine to do with as I please. Finally, freshman awareness. I mentioned hostage negotiations earlier because of this event. I find it despicable that a personal agenda is coming before the children. Not allowing this event will be a travesty for those 9th graders. I'm going to reiterate that this in no way affects me or mine. So I have no personal agenda here other than a great experience for these new 9th graders. As far as the civic, this too will be an extraordinary experience for these children, for all children. How dare someone use their position to create a roadblock for our children? That person should be ashamed of themselves. I'd love to know a reasonable explanation for this behavior from a person in authority, other than the actual reason, which is rumored to be spitefulness. That's it.
Thank you for your concerns.
3 minutes on the nose, Eileen.
My first question is about the math program, especially the trigonometry. I am concerned because so many kids failed the Regents last year. Is there any way that we could have tutoring throughout the year, not just at the end of the year for the Regents? So that once a week we have a tutoring program set up at the high school for these kids to come, whomever chooses, just like we do at the end of the year.
I'm going to add that to my, that's definitely a good point.
So many kids are having trouble even right now the first couple of weeks.
Dean, would you like to respond to that, Dean?
That's definitely something, when we looked at the results of our student performance in that Regents, most of those students were provided additional support in the lab period so that they will have differentiated instruction during that time to meet their needs and kind of meet whatever deficiencies that they had. In addition, we are looking to provide some support in those remedial classes prior to the exam, but we could look to see if we can expand it earlier on in the year.
Right, because it's great that you have it in year, and you've had it for the past 2 years, but I definitely think you need it throughout the year, especially with the failing grades.
Definitely. I'll bring it up with our high school principal as well.
Okay. My second thing I just would like to come out also is the sheet that you have to fill out to speak. I definitely don't agree with that. Some people come late, some people have a lot more to say. We shouldn't have to fill out a sheet. And in the little bit of time you guys have, how are you going to figure out your answers
you're up there taking care of everything else. If we fill out at the beginning of the night, it's the same scenario. You're going to be doing everything else. You're going to look at my sheet at the same time I'm speaking. Does that really give you enough time to actually come up with an answer?
All I can say about that today, when I went to the town, I had to write my name, address, phone number, et cetera, and the topic of which I wanted to speak about. I didn't have a problem doing it. You know, I handed it in, and I asked where I was on the list. They said, you're number 3. This was not my idea. It was, I think, it was in order to run a board meeting more efficiently. It has nothing to do with the community. When this was brought up at the meeting, the first thing I said was, the community's not going to like this. It's going to take them a while to get adjusted to this, like everything else.
I mean, I don't know the laws, but based on what she said, if that really is the law, I don't think we should be implementing
You have
that
Robert
form then.
Freeman here. It's on his website.
Yeah.
There's a
It's not
YouTube
a
video.
Oh, I thought it was the law that she said. Okay.
It's designed to facilitate grouping people together about the same topic. We're not trying to restrict anybody from talking. We're not going to say that anybody can't talk about an issue.
So
But
if we
it
get here
gives
late
us-
and the papers have already
It
been
gives us an
handed?
opportunity to pull, if we know that you want to speak with 3 other people about the same issue, we can call all 3 of you up together and say, we're going to discuss that issue now. These 3 people, so Ms. Jones, Ms. whatever, can you please come to the podium so you can ask your questions so we can hear all of it at the same time to get a better feel about that issue.
So there won't be restrictions then if you come late and you want to speak about the topic?
No.
You don't have to fill out the form, you still can
of course
come up, it
not.
has nothing to do with the
Nobody's
form?
going to stop anybody from speaking, that's not the goal.
Okay.
Nick, I didn't understand that 3 people would ever come up together either. That was
No,
not my
we said
impression.
that we would call those people to the podium when we talked in policy about in consecutive order,
Oh, okay.
so that those people all had the opportunity to speak at the same time, so that we were getting all the information about the topic at the same time. And we could hear it better, and then also the gathering of information is really, we felt is really important, so that we can respond to you. We have your information, we have the people that you spoke with about the topic, so that we can get back to them, we can find out, you know, where they stand on it, rather than us spinning our wheels trying to find out, calling you back, hey, who'd you talk to, we got a million things
As
going on.
long as it's not mandatory,
We can get to the
that's
heart
fine.
of the issue a lot quicker by having information that you provide us. And that's really the goal. It's not to limit anybody from talking, it's not to limit, you know, to limit the time of talking, it's to gather information so we can better facilitate your concerns and get back to you with quicker answers and involve all the people that were involved in what happened in the issue.
Okay, and I apologize, I have one more question then. The topic that we spoke about earlier about the teacher, I am just curious. My son came home last year, at the end of the year, and told me, Mom,
We're not
so-and-so.
talking about the issue though, right? We're talking about something.
No, I want to know
different.
what I was supposed to do, because you know, I didn't realize if I should ask it then or if I'm supposed to ask it now. So
Well,
you
that's
can hear
why I
my
gave-
question, if it's not right,
You can
then
ask it, we're not
Marlene
sure
just
if
say.
we can answer.
Yeah.
Go
Okay,
ahead. We'll-
that's fine.
you know.
And he said, Mom, so-and-so was high. And my answer was, oh my gosh, you know, don't spread those rumors, your kids are unbelievable, blah, 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 blah. So when it happened, I said, how, he's like, Mom, I told you, that's the teacher I told you about. And I said, wow, touche, you know, Mom's gonna take care of it.
I have to stop you there. I have to stop you there.
Okay, I just want to know if I
Stop
should
you
have
there.
called the school, my son said that, just to report it.
I would encourage any parent, they see something, any administrator, any teacher, if they see something, tell. That's
Okay.
the money. See
Contact
something,
the
you
building
tell.
administrator.
Do it, okay, thanks.
Regarding public participation, we seem to have flip-flopped over the last couple of years over should we announce who we are, where we're from, versus no, nobody should give that information. Now we're requiring it in writing. It's different, very, very different seesawing effects, and makes one very hesitant to come to a board meeting and want to speak because, dear God, am I saying it the wrong way? Am I not approaching the board in the right way? You need to be consistent. We can't keep flip-flopping like this. And it seems really repressive to have these forms, even though everybody's saying right now, you don't have to have them, we'll try to implement them. It just seems really repressive in that it's really trying to restrict communication. I understand the point that you're saying it from, but it feels very restrictive from this side. So
Right, but
just want to make that point.
we've never asked for names and addresses. We said, don't give your name and address last year.
For all of the years that I've been here,
We changed, no, we changed it, because in that little talk, Because I've been reading that little speech.
Right, but
And
before
it's-
that, it was everybody had to state their name
Right,
and
but
where they're from.
But when they
So
changed the law
flip-flopping's
that,
got to stop.
when it's at large, no one says their name, no one's had to say their address.
Right.
Right, that has been.
But, you know, my kids are still in middle school, and I've now been, this will be the third iteration of how we are allowed to approach the Board of Education. We elect you, we put you up there, we should be able to speak any way we want.
I don't disagree.
Any way you want. We're just trying to get information so we can help you to answer your questions.
That's
We're
why
not-
it's,
we're not
that's why
saying
it's
you
being
can't
brought
speak
back
any
to
way
be
you
more
want.
defined.
That's
I don't know if you
really
heard
what
me
it's
speak
about.
about it earlier.
Trying
It
to
needs to be more
solve
defined.
situations, trying to be more transparent, trying to give you the opportunity to provide us with all the information that you've gone through so we can help you to solve the problem.
I hear you. I just wanted to disagree.
And the boards change all the time, so unfortunately, that's why policy changes all the time. You know, I'm not aware of all the flip-flopping you're talking about because I wasn't involved in any of that.
Item number 2, a follow-up from Ronkonkoma Middle School from the winter sessions last year when the Lego Club had such an abomination there. Were all of the Lego kits ordered for RMS? They were supposed to be ordered in July?
Kits.
Because I don't want to hear that OBMS got their kits and RMS doesn't have their kits again this year. This will be the third year.
Dean, were the kids ordered?
Thank you. Have we replaced the faculty advisor?
As of yet, no.
Okay. You know very well limited time coming up with
I
the
do.
dates that we have for Lego competition. RMS Honor Society, Junior Honor Society, has been an abomination this year. The communications to the students were all supposed to go out at the same time, whether the students who applied got in or did not get in. The students who did not get in received their letters a full 5 days after the students who got in. There are students who got in who received their letters 3 or 4 days after some of the other students. The first meeting of the Honor Society was 2 days.
It's fine, but are you aware of her?
Have you spoken to the advisor about this, or the principal?
No, she stepped down.
There is no advisor.
There is no advisor.
Thank you, that's very important. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
The students were advised over an announcement today that the meeting of the Honor Society for Thursday afternoon will be canceled until further notice. And we'd like to know what this is doing to the induction ceremonies in 2 weeks. You know, we've got grandparents, aunts and uncles all coming in.
Does Miss Adams have your number?
Yeah,
Okay.
on speed dial.
I'll have Miss Adams call you because you have a very valid point.
Thank you.
I want an answer to that as well.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Just a question about the change in the policy. You mentioned you looked into a lot of other Board of Education. What ones did you look into?
I'm not, there were numerous ones that I don't have in front of me.
Give me a hint. There's a few? 3, 4, 7?
I think there was about 4 or 5.
I'm just thinking of the ones that.
There's 3 Village, Smithtown.
Smithtown. You look at Sago? Talk about Sago. We got information.
So 3 Village and Smithtown.
Those are the ones I remember.
Yeah,
Oh.
about 4 or 5.
So it's maybe 2 or 3 to change the whole policy. Okay. Well, thinking about changing the policy. Just my own opinion about the policy, it sounds absurd to me, but that's up to you guys to decide. Did the board approve the robocall? Did the board approve that robocall being made?
We had the opportunity to speak earlier
No,
about
you
that.
said that I had to speak, that was questions to Gercio from a legal standpoint. I'm asking the Board of Education now, okay, if the board approved the robocall that went out by Mrs. Adams. Yes or no? Yes or no?
Do you want to answer that?
We don't approve it. We don't discuss.
Yes or no? So, I'm assuming that's
We don't
no.
discuss robocalls.
Okay, when the Ebola crisis hit, did you not inform the Board of Education before you made the call, Mrs. Adams?
Yes, I did.
Why didn't you make that notification to the board on this matter? Because I guarantee you what they would have told you, don't make it. Okay, so I got that covered. My second question
I
is...
disagree. I agree with Ms. Adams that the phone call should have been made.
Well, oh, that's unfortunate, man. That's very unfortunate. Is it my turn, Mrs. Aviles, to speak?
No, stop his time. Stop his time. I have no problem. Stop. The information was out there already. And there was a lot of unclear information that was reported. There was a lot of unclear information that was reported by News 12. There was a lot of unclear information that was reported by Al Graff in his posts. Can't believe I'm saying this? Why? I'm speaking.
You saying this.
Why?
As a teacher.
That's nothing to do with being a teacher. I'm a parent in this district, Brad. I'm a parent in this district, Brad. And very simply, the information was out there, and there was a lot of misinformation out there.
Nick, I'm asking you to sit down.
We discussed transparency as a big issue. And I think we were very transparent in giving the community information that was reported in the police report, and that was it. And policy that is stated on our policy.
What you did in the robocall is you took away one of my members' due process rights, and you convicted him without any evidence whatsoever. To the point that all criminal charges could be dropped in the future, and that robocall took away his due process rights. Let me ask one other question.
That's it on that
Let me ask one other question. Mrs. Adams, let me ask another question, okay, and to the board. When Mrs. Adams sent the text calling two school board members bitches, okay, because of what? Excuse me, please.
Your language. No, your language.
When Mrs. Adams made that text using social media, did anybody bring up the point that she broke school policy? About harassment, about using texts, about social media, and what was the consequences to that?
Yes, we did, Tony.
What was the consequences to that?
We can't discuss that.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Mrs. Adams, would you have liked, because you know I have all the phone numbers, would you have appreciated me making a robocall, okay, about how the next day, allegedly, and you never just said you didn't say it, allegedly said you did it as a drunken text to Mrs. Pepe at RMS? That's alleged. I'm not saying you did it, but that's the alleged. And
Thank you, Tony.
would you have appreciated a robocall to the community saying what our superintendent did? What you did was wrong, and we're not going to stand for it.
If you have something to say, just step to the mic.
That was exciting. I have a question. God bless you, Jenny. So, I would like to know who approved the Leader in Me program for Basti and who approved the spending for this program? Please stop the clock. I have a lot to say.
Ms. Adams, would you like to answer that question?
It was presented to us from the building principal. The school had done a year of study and a
Presented to the entire board or to one or two members of the board?
It was presented to me.
Okay.
Then I directed it to Mrs. Adams. A discussion was made, and we moved forward with the program.
Did you investigate this program at all, or did you take it on the word of the building principal?
Yes.
So then you're aware that this is a program that's based on Mormon principles where they've changed the language in an opportunity to induct more people to follow the Mormon way?
It is a research-based program that has an independent
That has
research
no
behind it.
third-party independent data.
So I could have a further conversation with you about this.
I would like to have it publicly because this program costs $50,000 to $70,000 for a character education program. We've already spent $15,000 on 2 days of training for the teachers, and I have sat here at these meetings with many other parents who are frustrated in this district that the teachers are having a difficult time working with the curriculum. They complain that we need more training, the rollout is incorrect, we need more help, and we're wasting money on a character education program when they use 2 curriculum training days for that, when it could have been better served actually teaching our children math, social studies, science, reading. I have a huge issue with this. That's a lot of money to spend, and for one school. And I've already gone to my child's school, and I had seen all this fanfare, all these posters. We have a DASA committee that could have created a curriculum based on, if they wanted to base it on the 7 habits, even though I don't particularly agree with it. But if they wanted to base it on it, the junior high, OBMS, I'll give them great kudos to Miss Bailey and Mr. Piombo. They created Manners Matter. They brought it over from Smithtown. DASA created a whole big thing. And it cost them nothing. They took a couple of dollars out of their school fund to make posters for the school, and that's how it was implemented. This is a colossal waste of money, and just like students can opt out of the state test, I would like to know, if I decide I want to opt my children out of the Leader in Me, what will the school do to accommodate my children?
The program is a school-wide behavioral intervention program that is geared towards developing leadership skills for students.
I have the opportunity to opt out, though.
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
So this was a grassroots kind of movement from our instructional staff. It was their motivation, their desire, and their want to do this program for their students. So the teachers worked all year, a select group of teachers. They presented it to the entire faculty. This is something that they wanted to do. The faculty then went to the principal to discuss this is something that they believe in and they want to try, and we want to support those efforts.
Don't the children and the parents have a say in it? I don't want my child coming home doing special hand signals and having a special language that they use. It's a win-win. Let's sharpen the saw. It's ridiculous. Any teacher worth their salt has been providing this information before this. We are spending thousands upon thousands of dollars for a program that it's insulting that I believe that our teachers are smart enough to come up with this on their own. We really need to spend this kind of money. You could buy the book for $5 on Amazon. They could have created a whole curriculum.
Again, it was an effort that our teachers put forward that they really wanted to try with their students.
But you're
We
in
allowed
charge.
them-
Didn't you have the ability to say this is completely insane to spend this kind of money when we have staff
I'm
members?
supporting our instructional staff in an initiative that they want us to move forward, and I think it's good for kids, and I think developing leadership skills and developing a common language around those leadership skills is something that I think all people.
And that was something that you felt we need to spend $50,000 to $70,000 on?
We have
That's how
not-
much the program costs. I've done extensive research. I will never get up here and speak without a clue. I will make sure I've done my research, and I have done the research on this. It's a multi-level marketing program. I'm well aware of it. The goal is to become a lighthouse school, where the children will basically be running the school. They'll sit down to teacher conferences with you and show, well, they have tracked their own data. This is ridiculous. They will never come and say, well, I will sit at a teacher conference while my child runs the conference. It's not appropriate. It's ridiculous. And we really needed to spend money for this? They've been doing character education programs at the schools for years. This is nothing new. It's common sense. And honestly, I don't think you give the teachers enough credit. The teachers have been implementing these types of activities in their classrooms. This program also comes with a community service aspect, so now we're complaining that we can't fit in the Common Core, but now we're going to do community service.
This was a request from the
I'm
instructional
really sorry to say, but I don't care who it came from. It's just a waste of district money. We can't afford to buy books for our libraries, but we're going to go spend it on teaching kids to be,
one of the things I'm concerned about
prioritize.
is, not to interrupt you, I apologize, is, we have put extensive money into our libraries over the last year as well as
I
this
have
year.
been calling nonstop to do that. Let's not all be patting ourselves on the back. Mrs. Donnelly has been the one who's helped me to make sure that we have books. Our administrators have failed in that aspect, but we've spent a lot of time making sure that we're doing the Leaders in Me for all this money. I'm sorry, it's an insult to the
Ms. Kelly,
children.
it's 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Is it true that we are now keeping 2 policemen or police cars at the high school, like on a regular basis, or is this just the kids talking?
We have a school resource officer. We actually have 2 of them that are assigned to our high school and our middle schools and a lot of other schools in the area. We do invite them in. We want them to see, we want our kids to see them as a resource for them in good times and bad. So they have been in the building a couple different times, but they've also been at Belfort High School. They've been to Sachem High Schools, the different high schools.
Okay.
They're assigned to us by the Suffolk County
So it's
precinct.
not that something
No.
has gotten worse in the school or anything?
No, 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 no.
Visit all high schools.
Okay. My next thing was I wanted to bring up about the sports and the fields. We had talked another time about the fields being for all the children, all the sports, and earlier on in the season, I think I had mentioned to you, Ms. Adams, that I think it was the second day of tryouts, that it looked as though from the first day to the second day, they had shifted them, and they were sharing the stadium turf and the back turf and whatever. So now, several weeks into the season, I was wrong. it is like a boys' field, a football field, and I have boys. I mean, just last week, my daughter was playing back there, the varsity team, and my son, you know, on JV was playing on the stadium turf. So I don't feel it should be a football field or a, you know, maybe it's a varsity field, because they'll all get to varsity, they'll all play there. I don't know. But I just feel like there's got to be a better way to rotate around the fields. Everybody paid for them. Everybody should play on them. That was that. My other thing, also having to do with the sports, was I wanted to say thank you, Miss Adams. I heard that this was your, not to get too personal, you know, when the game's away far in the back, I have a very hard time getting my mother there. My mother is, you know, very old, very sick, given 6 months to live. We're now at 10 months where she wants to be at every game. She wants to be, and to get her to those back fields was a chore. We couldn't, it wasn't allowed. You can't take your car back there. Now I'm able to call security, because I tried again this year, and they were happy to come. They said, if we're not busy with some disaster somewhere, we'll be there. We'll bring you back. They brought us back. They came back at the end. I said, you know, I hope you're not going to get in trouble for this. Thank you so much. They said, no, no. The superintendent wants these fields accessible to everyone. And, you know, no more, can't go back there with the car, whatever. So thank you. I appreciate that.
I'll just piggyback on that. Last year, during the baseball season, there were more than one person
Yeah.
had a hard time.
You need help.
She provided a bus.
Oh.
Anyone just rode back on that road.
No kidding.
Yes.
Nice.
This is not the first incident. This is something that, I was there and I watched it happen. And I thought that was very nice.
It was wonderful. They couldn't have been nicer about it. So thank you. And my last thing was just, I wanted to know if the robocall that we received about pulling children in or out of tests or opting in and out, was that approved? Did we need approval for that, or that's okay, we can just do that?
I know. District?
I don't know, talking about, you know, what's approved, what's not approved.
I know
was
Mrs.
wondering
Simmons will
if the
send
calls
out.
that came into my home telling me that I should, you know, consider the right to pull kids. I know what my rights are. You know, so I'm just saying, if one's got to be approved, then the other's got to be approved.
I believe that came.
No, that didn't come from us.
Okay.
That didn't come from us.
We're not involved. Board's not involved in local boards.
Okay, well, thank you, and I want to say thank you, because when the time comes that where stuff is hidden from us, as far as what my child was due to have that teacher, it would have been hell to pay if I found that somebody was standing in front of her under those circumstances.
Thank you,
So
Deidre.
thank you.
Thank you, Deidre.
I hope to always be informed of that stuff.
You're the last speaker.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for approving the marching band to be able to go to
That's a
the
great
Cherry
thing.
Blossom Parade. It's an honor for our family. All of my children will now have that opportunity to participate in it. I would like to say, as far as the Leader in Me program, I work in a school district that utilizes the Covey system, and I see in today's day where, you know, society is the way it is, I see the benefits of it, where children are held accountable and encouraged to be responsible for their actions and to be considerate of others. And because you're using that unified language, everybody's getting the same message and practicing the same things. And it might be difficult in the beginning to adapt to that, but this is my 3rd year there, and you know, and I'm an old-timer, so I just see all the benefits of it, and I applaud that we're doing it in one school. I would love to see it in our whole entire district. And of course, starting at the middle school, working its way up is the best way to go. And erring on the side of caution, I really appreciate, I'm sorry about the fallout or any repercussions, but I really appreciate keeping the safety of our children with the drug situation in Suffolk County the way that it is. That really has to be of prime importance, especially when the students know about it from social media days before and the school district isn't speaking about it. That sends more of a negative message than if you do say something, so it was greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
And the Leader in Me program, I think it's 50 to 70,000 after 5 years. It's not that kind of money initially. Am I right?
Okay.
going to take a 5-minute break, but we're going to adjourn the meeting, and then we're going to be heading into executive session. Motion of the Board of Education to move into executive session in accordance with open laws meeting, employment street, particular person or persons corporation confidential assembly to meeting for discuss issues involving a special education student in the CTA.